Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Build the Roster, the show where we take a hypothetical fighting game and build our dream roster around it. And if you can believe it, it's April once again. That means it's officially been 2 years since we put out our first Build the Roster, and in that time it's become our biggest show, and I just want to take a moment to thank everyone who has tuned in and supported us over the years. And if you're new to this channel and you haven't subscribed yet, we're trying to hit 50,000 subs by the end of the year, so if you want to take a look around and you like what you see, then maybe think about clicking that button and following along. Now, for the 2-year anniversary, I want to do something special. And on our first episode, we tackled Marvel vs. Capcom 4. Then for our 1-year anniversary, we did Capcom vs. SNK 3. So, as you can tell, we have something of a pattern going on here. Which means today, for our 2-year anniversary, it's only fair that we take the next big Capcom crossover fighter and give it the long-awaited sequel that everyone has been asking for. Problem is, I don't know anything about Tatsunoko, so yeah, that's out. Luckily, there was another huge Capcom crossover from a few years ago. One that had the gaming world hyped in a way that we've rarely ever seen. One that people have been hoping and begging for a sequel to for years and years. One that was even in the news just last year, getting people talking and speculating all over again. One that is literally in the title of this episode you're watching, so there's really no point in me trying to hype it up and keep it a secret. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to bring together the greatest fighters of 2 universes once again to duke it out, as we build the roster for Tekken Cross Street Fighter. Let me set the stage for you. The 2D fighting game world, after being nearly dead for close to a decade, had come roaring back thanks to Street Fighter 4. Now, brand new players were flocking to the fighting game scene as new games were pouring out. And this wasn't just good for 2D fighters, but all fighting games saw a rise in popularity. So Capcom decided to capitalize on this, and thanks to the friendship between Street Fighter's developer Yoshinori Ono and Tekken's developer Katsuhiro Harada, they announced a crossover for the ages. Capcom and Bandai Namco would put out 2 games. Capcom was going to release Street Fighter Cross Tekken, a crossover game that would see the Tekken characters adapted into the Street Fighter playstyle, and Bandai Namco would put out Tekken Cross Street Fighter, a follow-up that would see the Street Fighter characters adapted into the Tekken playstyle. And for anyone who doesn't remember what it was like in the video game world during this time, the hype was so thick you could see it, taste it, smell it, touch it. It was everywhere and was sweeping up everything. We were getting big cinematic trailers with licensed music celebrating this once-in-a-lifetime occurrence. Even people who had never played Street Fighter or Tekken were talking about this game. This was primed to be one of the biggest fighting game successes of all time. And then Capcom proceeded to screw up every single step of the game's development and release. For starters, Capcom started hyping up this new gym system to the point of cramming it in our faces. Everywhere you turned, it was all Capcom could talk about, and it was nothing more than a tiresome and tedious pay-to-win mechanic that sucked all the fun out of the game. Then there was the Pandora system, an in-game mechanic that would cause you to kill off one of your own characters and make you almost instantly lose the match. So of course it had a super basic input that was incredibly easy for casual players to accidentally activate. And let's not forget the PlayStation exclusive characters that made Xbox and PC players say, "Oh, so I'm just going to have a worse version of the game? Oh, well then I don't want that." And then came the death nail when 12 fully completed, totally playable characters were discovered on the disc at release. But you couldn't use them because they were going to be DLC characters released at a later date, and believe me when I tell you, everyone was talking about this. Overnight, this became the only thing that the game was known for, and nobody wanted to buy a game that was known for on-disc DLC. So yes, after only 3 years, Capcom's triumphant return to the world of fighting games had fizzled out and this game flopped hard. And hey, wouldn't you know it, suddenly Bandai Namco went real quiet on any news about Tekken Cross Street Fighter. Yeah, they never brought this game up again despite many fans still asking for it. I mean, sure, Capcom bungled Street Fighter Cross Tekken, but Tekken Cross Street Fighter wouldn't be made by Capcom. It would be made by Bandai Namco, and they could see all the mistakes that Capcom made and avoid them while giving us the crossover game that everyone actually wanted. But sadly, aside from some early character model reveals, nothing ever came from this. But fans kept asking about for years, until finally in 2021, Katsuhiro Harada finally confirmed that yes, the game had been canceled. Only to then come right back out and say, wait, no, you guys misunderstood me, the game is not canceled. Only to then come out yet again and say, okay, sorry, misunderstood again, here goes, third time's the charm. The game is not canceled, but it's also not in development. Yeah, essentially, Harada said that Tekken Cross Street Fighter is the Schrodinger's cat of fighting games. It's trapped in a box where it remains neither alive nor dead. Basically, the game is still on their to-do list, even being about 30% done, but considering Tekken 8 is probably Harada's next big priority, then if Bandai Namco were to start on any other fighting game, I'm sure Soul Calibur would more than likely be next in line. And considering that we live in a day and age where the development time of fighting games grows longer and longer with each passing generation, that means that if they ever actually did get to working on this game, it would probably be released around, 2048? Yeah, okay, the game is canceled. You can say it isn't canceled, and I would love for this clip to pop up on the Poorly Aged Things Twitter one day, but it ain't happening, it's canceled. Might as well finally accept that the game is never coming out and it's dead. But lucky for you, I happen to specialize in making videos about dead fighting games that are never coming out. Yes, folks, you see, this isn't just our 2-year anniversary for Build the Roster, it's also the 10-year anniversary of Street Fighter Cross Tekken. So today, we're going to pretend like somehow, through some cosmic miracle, Tekken Cross Street Fighter is picked back up. Every character is on the table. All the crappy microtransactions and needlessly complicated mechanics are gone, and this long-awaited sequel is finally going to get made. And it's up to us to build that roster. Now, first thing we have to decide on is how many characters are going to be in our roster, and luckily, since this would be Tekken's take on the game Capcom already made, the answer is easy. Let's just take the same number of characters from that game and do it again. Oh, right. There were the 5 exclusive PlayStation characters and the 12 previously mentioned on-disc DLC characters who might not have officially been included in the game, but they were totally available and ready in the game. Well, it wouldn't be our anniversary episode if I didn't get overly complicated with the roster size. Okay, let's figure this puppy out. Including the 2 bosses, Street Fighter Cross Tekken launched with an official roster of 38, a solid size for any fighting game. But as I said, it also included 5 PlayStation exclusive characters. But we're not going to consider them because they were more than likely added as a result of a deal worked out between Sony and Capcom, and we can't assume that that would happen again, so they don't count for this video. Which means the big question that we have to figure out is, do we count the on-disc DLC characters as part of the roster? Because even if they weren't legally available at launch, they were totally done and complete at launch. And I've often said that the key to success in a fighting game is content. The more characters you have, the better chance it will have at succeeding. But 12 characters is a lot. That would indeed require a ton of extra work, and you can't just ask the developer to pump out that much extra content without some extra coin on top. So yeah, I'm kind of split on whether or not we should count the on-disc DLC. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. Split it. Rather than including none of the characters, or all 12 of them, we're going to split it right down the middle and include 6. So 6 plus 38 makes 44, and I know that is a very large starting roster, but remember, this is a crossover game, and those do tend to have big rosters. And also, Tekken Tag Tournament 2 launched with over 50 characters on console and over 40 in arcades. It's not like Bandai Namco can't make games with rosters this big. especially considering that we would be reusing a lot of the assets from the last Tekken game. So, now we got our starting roster size, but you all know it's rare I leave it at just that. You see, I can't just list off 22 Tekken characters and 22 Street Fighter characters, that's not interesting. No, I want to give myself some kind of a challenge. Something I have to think about when picking which characters will appear. And you know something? Street Fighter Cross Tekken did the same thing. That game wanted to pay tribute to Tekken Tag Tournament setup, so they crafted the roster around the idea of every character fitting into a two-person team. And that's a great idea. Except that a lot of these teams made zero sense. I mean, okay, Ryu and Ken, of course, easy choice. Cammy and Chun-Li, absolutely. Guile and Abel, sure, that works. But then you got stuff like Zangief and Rufus? What exactly do they have in common? Have they ever even talked before today? Or Jury and M. Bison? Doesn't she hate him and is actively trying to kill him? So yeah, the whole team idea didn't quite work, but there is another idea that I think we could bring back. The rival fights. Yes, each team didn't just have their own endings, but all the Street Fighter teams had Tekken teams as their rivals and vice versa. And again, not all of them really made sense, but I do dig this idea and I think we could work with it. So that means for every Tekken character we pick today, I have to pick a Street Fighter character to be their rival. I think that's a good enough twist to make this video interesting, and it will still allow me to throw in enough of the important faces, oddball choices, and most importantly, fan favorites. So, now we got the roster size, we got the unique twist, we're all ready for the next battle. Ladies and gentlemen, I present you with the starting roster of Tekken Cross Street Fighter. Jin Kazama. The first choice for the Tekken side has to be the game's protagonist. Is what I would say if the game had a single protagonist. Yeah, Tekken isn't really a game about a character, it's more about a family. This series is one part fighting game, one part dynasty-style soap opera. However, the third member of the Mishima family to be introduced, Jin Kazama, is a must to include. He was raised by his mother completely separate from the other Mishima drama until she was killed by a demon and he had to search for his grandfather who trained him how to fight so he could get his revenge. And then his grandfather tried to kill him, but Jin survived because he had a dark devil gene inside of him that he got from his grandmother. Yeah, I warned you that this family history was insane. Might make for a good TV show though. Yeah, there's many reasons why we should include Jin. He was the face of the third game, which was the game that made Tekken explode. He's arguably one of the biggest fan favorite characters in the series. I remember all the kids back in the 90s raved about this guy. And most recently, he got his own show coming out on Netflix. So yeah, putting him front and center on the box is definitely priority number one.
Now fight your rivals!
This is the path of my destiny.
Round one. Fight!
Ryu. Yes, if we're picking a rival for Jin, to me it has to be Ryu. Now, you might think it's just because Ryu is the protagonist of Street Fighter and Jin is the protagonist of Tekken, but remember, I said Jin was one of the Tekken pro tags. I definitely could have matched Ryu against Heihachi or Kazuya, I mean heck, the last game certainly did. But no, I think that Jin and Ryu have more in common beyond just their starring roles. Both of them were taken in by old masters at a young age after losing their parents. Both of them have older evil figures constantly looking to destroy them. And most importantly, both of them have had to fight back against a darkness growing inside of them. Yes, Jin has the devil gene that turns him into a winged horn creature straight out of a 90s metal album cover. And Ryu has the Satsui no Haru that fills him with a bloodlust that commands him to fight. I would love to see these two as the rivals to each other, just so that Ryu could try to help Jin, to tell him that he knows what he's going through and that he can help him learn how to fight back against the darkness. Heck, make that an ending for Jin, where we see him in a gi just like Ryu and he's meditating under a waterfall next to him. When you do a crossover game, you need to get some crossover fan service in there, and this is a great example of how to do that.
Get ready for the next battle.
Kazuya Mishima. This is another one you can file under the no duh folder. As I said, Jin became the protagonist of the series in Tekken 3, but before that it was Kazuya, and still to this day, he is one of, if not the biggest face of the franchise. I mean, heck, Sakurai said, "I need me a Tekken character for Smash Bros," and we know who he ended up choosing. Now, Kazuya shares a lot in common with his son Jin. Both of them were trained by Heihachi and then betrayed by him. Both of them went power mad after being put in charge of the Mishima Zaibatsu. And most importantly, they both have that pesky devil gene running through their blood, letting them turn into winged monsters. But the big difference there is that while Jin tries to fight against the darkness inside him, Kazuya went full-blown heel turn. Over time, Kazuya has been a hero, anti-hero, and full-blown villain. He has run the emotional gambit throughout this franchise, and I think it's because of his journey into darkness they stuck out in so many people's minds as such a memorable character.
Now fight your rivals!
Don't worry. I'll end you quickly.
Urien. We're not even a tenth of the way through this list, and I'm already throwing some curveballs at you. As I said, Kazuya is a huge face for Tekken, its original protagonist and one of its biggest villains. So of course, why wouldn't I make his rival the sub-boss from Street Fighter 3? Yeah, I know you might have been expecting a more prominent face in the Street Fighter world, but hear me out. Kazuya went power mad when he took control of his father's company, the Mishima Zaibatsu. Then, after losing control of it, he became obsessed with gaining it back. Urien and his brother Gil were raised to serve a global cartel called the Illuminati. But Gil was chosen to run the Illuminati while Urien was forced to work under him. This sort of caused Urien to go nuts, and he swore to take Gil down so he could have all this power to himself. Yeah, both Urien and Kazuya are power mad and obsessed with gaining control of massive corporations that they view as their birthright. So let's have the story between these two in arcade mode be that Kazuya wants to control the Illuminati and Urien wants to control the Mishima Zaibatsu. And I know someone might say that we should have Kazuya's rival be Gil since he's the one who actually leads the Illuminati. But Gil has this very noble, holier-than-thou god complex going on. Urien and Kazuya are both just angry bastards. Speaking in terms of personality, that's a far stronger match.
Get ready for the next battle.
死に場所にここを選ぶとはな。わしと貴様にとってはふさわしい場所。
Heihachi Mishima. And the final part of the big three Mishimas, you knew Heihachi had to make it in this game somewhere. Except that I actually almost didn't put him in here. Yeah, I'll admit, Heihachi was actually the last character that I put into this roster. I know that will shock a lot of you. I mean, Heihachi is arguably the poster boy for this entire series. Why would I leave him out? Well, because I always like to be a bit realistic when I put together these hypothetical rosters. I always like to think about who could actually be used in a game. And spoiler alert for Tekken 7, but at the end of that game, Heihachi died. And I know you might be thinking, so what? It's a crossover game. It's not canon or set in any specific time. Why should that stop you from using a character? Well, because in addition to the character dying, sadly after that game came out, Heihachi's voice actor passed away as well. And in Japan, they tend to take that sort of thing pretty seriously. When a voice actor passes away, it's kind of like the character themselves are really gone. So I actually had to stop and think, if this game got made, would they actually recast Heihachi? I mean, he's not coming back for the main series anymore, so would they really get a brand new actor just to play him for this one crossover game? But then the trailer for Tekken Bloodlines came out, and yes, Heihachi was there with a brand new actor, so hey, guess that answers that question. We already got a new voice actor all lined up for him in the animated series, so it would make sense to take that actor and put him in the games as well, so Heihachi gets to come back. I know it might have seemed pointless for me to go on about all that information, but trust me, I know someone would have brought that argument up in the comments, and in all honesty, I don't really need to talk about why Heihachi deserves to be in this game. He's freaking Heihachi Mishima, and Heihachi Mishima is Tekken.
Now fight your rivals!
You shall make an interesting opponent.
Gouken. This is another one of those that I bet plenty of you didn't see coming, seeing as how Gouken has only been in one game and hasn't been mentioned in a while. But I feel like Goken being the rival to Heihachi would be a perfect match because of how much they have in common, while still being very different. Both of them are old masters, having trained the big faces of the series, except that while Goken taught Ryu and Ken patience and inner peace, Heihachi threw Kazuya off of a mountain to see if he could climb back up. Both of them have fought against characters who were important to them, who ended up becoming possessed by dark evil energy. With Goken, it was his brother Akuma, who was possessed by the Satsui no Hado, and for Heihachi, it was his wife Kazumi, who was possessed by the Devil Gene. Except that while Goken couldn't bring himself to finish his brother off, Heihachi really didn't have that problem when it came to his wife. And since then, Goken has helped his pupil Ryu to battle against the Satsui no Hado that is inside of him, while Heihachi saw that his kid and grandson also had the Devil Gene in them, and he said, well, guess I have to kill you both as well. So Goken has to be the rival to Heihachi because this is the clash in ideals and morals in the games. This to me would be the two characters that really show off the divide between the tones of Tekken and Street Fighter.
Get ready for the next battle.
King! I've been talking a lot so far about the protagonists or the poster boys of Tekken, in other words, the characters they would put on the box. But make no mistake, when the first Tekken game came out, this Jaguar mask was what stuck in most players' minds. I remember King being one of those characters that blew up among players because he's a wrestler in a Jaguar mask. Of course we were going to love that. But now that we're older, now that the series has been around longer, now that we've gotten to know these characters a little bit more and we're looking for more than just visuals in them and we want some more depth to these characters, yeah, we still love King. He's a wrestler who travels the world raising money for orphans. He's got the whole legacy thing going for him as he's trying to live up to the first King's memory. And did I mention the Jaguar mask? All of this makes him one of the most memorable characters in this series and one of the most iconic grapplers in the history of fighting games.
Now fight your rivals!
That's incredible! Totally awesome!
Yeah! Muscle is stronger than blade. Now is my turn.
Zangief. A lot of the rivalries I'm picking here today are based on things like personalities or backstories, but sometimes you just have to pit characters against each other for purely mechanical reasons. And I would argue King is probably the second biggest grappler in fighting games, and the only reason he's not number one is because Zangief is sitting right over there. So of course, we have to have them both step into the ring and go head to head. Heck, you don't even need to have some big story reason to bring them together. They both get booked in a wrestling match together, both vying for the belt, and then in the end, if Zangief wins, he donates all of his winnings to King's orphanage and they form a friendship with each other. Boom, done, it writes itself. Heck, I'd even love to see a scene where Zangief can't understand King's Jaguar sounds, so the two of them just start flexing to try and use the unspoken language of muscle power to communicate.
Get ready for the next battle.
Nina Williams. Nina Williams is another one of those characters that when you think of Tekken, you have to think of her. She's one of the only characters who has been in every single game, even getting her own spin-off, and she's been heavily involved in the plot. She started off as an assassin who was hired to kill Heihachi, then she was hired to kill Kazuya, then she tried to kill Jin, then she worked for Jin as his bodyguard, then she ended up running the Mishima Zaibatsu herself, and most recently, she was working under Heihachi. She's the only person she's tried to kill who she didn't also end up working for was Kazuya. Oh wait, she was his teammate in Street Fighter Cross Tekken. Damn, we have a perfect sweep here. Yeah, as an expert assassin and the ultimate hired gun, Nina has gone on to be not only a deadly warrior, but also she's kind of perfect to shove into the story wherever you want, because since she has alliances that sway with whoever's paying her, you can kind of make her fit wherever. So it would be easy to slide her into this game and have her serve whatever role we needed.
Now fight your rivals!
For those who I wish to protect, I will fight you.
Cammy. If there is one character who to me immediately jumps to the front of the line for potential rivals for Nina Williams, it has to be Cammy. Nina was raised from birth to be an expert assassin, whereas Cammy was a special agent who was brainwashed to be an assassin, but eventually broke free of this and dedicated her life to bringing down those who turned her into a killer puppet. In other words, both of them have experience being deadly secret agents, and both of them fight with their agility and attacks designed to go for the kill. And on a deeper level, as someone who was forced to become an assassin, Cammy would probably have no love lost for going up against someone like Nina, who takes pride in how good she is at it.
Get ready for the next battle.
Hwoarang. If your fighting game has a protagonist, it has to have a rival as well. And Hwoarang is a hothead taekwondo master who enjoyed back alley street fights up until he fought Jin to a draw, and he decided he would become his rival and chase him down until they could finally decide who was better. And sure, over time, Jin has gone on to be a demon and ran a major corporation and even started World War III. I'm not making that last one up, the Tekken storyline goes to some really strange places. But Hwoarang was always there looking for a rematch. So for fleshing out Jin as a character and for being that cocky guy with attitude who was just overflowing with cool, he's remained important to the fans and to the Tekken series as a whole. Plus, just speaking personally, I just think that Taekwondo is a cool fighting style, and I think that the Tekken developers do a wonderful job handling that with Hwoarang.
Now fight your rivals!
I'm ready for you. Bring it on!
Ken Masters. Before I explain why I picked Ken as Hwoarang's rival, I'd just like to say Hwoarang is a Taekwondo fighter from South Korea who in the last game was now wearing an eye patch. You have no idea how hard it was for me to not pick Jury for this spot. But no, I have to go with Ken Masters because, well, for starters, Hwoarang's role in Tekken is the rival to Jin, Ken's role in Street Fighter is the rival to Ryu. So on some level, it just makes sense to pit the two big rivals against each other. But beyond that, I think there's a great potential dynamic between these two. As I said, Hwoarang is hothead, he's got attitude, he's impulsive, and is always looking for a good scrap. Well, what I just described doesn't really apply to Ken, but it does apply to who Ken used to be. Yeah, around Street Fighter 2, this is exactly how you would describe Ken, because that's exactly how you would describe most fighting game rivals. But now Ken's older, he's got a family, he's got a job, he's settled down and he's cooled off, and I like the idea of Ken going up against Hwoarang and looking at him and seeing a bit of who he used to be. It could be a really nice character moment for him.
Get ready for the next battle.
Paul Phoenix. I wanted to bring Paul up next because thanks to his gi and hair color, I'm sure many of you thought I was going to save Ken to be his rival. And boy, are you going to be disappointed who I actually chose. But let's not worry about that for now. Let's focus on what makes Paul Phoenix such a great character and why he's so important to Tekken. Again, kind of like King's Mask or Heihachi's crazy Wolverine hair, Paul's Mountain of a Broom Top was one of those early character designs that stuck out in most people's mind when they saw the first game. And since then, he's continued to be important to the series. He's definitely one of those characters who when you think of Tekken, you think of Paul. And he's shown off some impressive skills in the series. He's got that trademark punch that is actually the most damaging attack in many games. And he's even the character who canonically beat Ogre, the god of fighting in Tekken 3. So, what Street Fighter character could possibly match this mighty mountain of manliness?
Now fight your rivals!
Dan Hibiki, back after the ultimate improvement!
Dan Hibiki. Okay, some of you might have a few questions. I mean, after that description of Paul, why would I pick Street Fighter's resident joke character as his rival? Well, as I said, Paul Phoenix is a cool character and is overflowing with power. But I may have left out the tiny important detail that he is also often used as a source of comedy. I said that he's the character who canonically beat the god of fighting Ogre, but then he left after beating Ogre in his original form before he could transform into his true form, where Jin, the true hero of the game, stepped in to stop him, and Paul's victory was ruled not applicable. And Paul's legacy of being treated as the butt of many jokes continued from there. He's had multiple endings revolving around him being obsessed with fighting aliens, and thanks to him not getting that sweet Ogre prize money, he's constantly broke and looking to make a quick buck. Wow, a fighter always down his luck and constantly broke? Does that sound like anyone we know? Yes, I'll admit Dan is easily more jokey than Paul. Paul is a cool badass who also has a lot of jokes made at his extent, while Dan is a pure joke character. But Paul's jokes and bad luck overlap with Dan enough to make them a perfect match. I mean, as I said, Paul's had multiple endings revolving around aliens. Who wouldn't want to see Dan Hibiki's ending in this game where he gets abducted in a UFO? And speaking purely from a mechanical standpoint, I would love to see what Harada and his team could do with Dan. Tekken has a lot of goofy characters, but they don't really have any joke characters. They don't really have any non-animal themed joke characters. So I would love to see what they could do with this challenge. I mean, how would they adapt Dan's taunts into this game? Would they just give him one really long taunt and that would be his 10-string combo for the game? I want to see the answer to these questions.
Get ready for the next battle.
They get serious this time.
It's all on the line. Sorry.
Special recipes are applied.
Martial Law. Speaking of Paul, let's throw his best buddy Martial Law into the game as well. Yes, these two have become a duo in the game who are practically inseparable, but that's not the only reason I'm including him. You see, I've mentioned certain fighting game roles in this video, the grappler, the rival, but there's one role that many people overlook despite the fact that almost every single fighting game has one. The Bruce Lee. Yes, Bruce Lee's flashy, stylish techniques and personality influenced such a wide audience that many fighting game developers base characters around him, but over the years that's kind of become sort of a dying fad. I see fewer and fewer fighting games creating characters in his image, and yet Martial Law has endured. It has even evolved to be more than just a simple Bruce Lee clone. He's jokey, he's also a relatable, down-on-his-luck guy like Paul, he runs a restaurant, he's got a lot going for him that makes him stand out as his own character. So, let's see what happens when he goes up against...
Now fight your rivals.
There is no way you could ever knock me out.
Fei Long. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I am proposing something never before seen in a crossover game. Sure, we've seen protagonists fight protagonists, we've seen villains fight villains, but we have never seen the Bruce Lee character fight the Bruce Lee character. Fei Long is another fighting game character inspired by Bruce Lee, but while Martial Law went on to become his own character, Fei Long is just Bruce Lee. He's literally a martial arts movie star. Street Fighter knows what they created and they are not trying to hide it. So screw it, these are probably the two biggest Bruce Lee inspired fighting game characters ever. Let's have them actually step into the ring and settle who is the best. And speaking mechanically, I want to see how the Tekken crew could handle this. I mean, how do you take two characters based off of the exact same guy and then make each of their moves feel similar but completely different? I think they're up to the challenge and I would love to see how they do it. Also, just speaking in terms of the story, or the arcade endings and the character interactions, I would love to see Martial Law meet a guy who fights just like him and even kind of looks like him, only for this down-on-his-luck broke restaurant owner to see that this other guy is a world-famous movie star, and Law just has to wonder, what the heck am I doing wrong? Heck, have Law's arcade ending be him and Paul developing their craziest money-making scheme yet as they lock Fei Long in his trailer, and then Law has to walk around the movie set pretending to be him. I'm laughing already thinking about let's make this happen.
Get ready for the next battle.
Steve Fox. All fighting games need a good boxer character, and Steve Fox is a great boxer character, and he's a very unique character for Tekken. You see, in a world full of evil devil genes and super soldiers and robots and super intelligent kangaroos, Steve Fox feels very realistic. I mean, okay, yes, he was created in a lab to artificially create a son for Nina Williams while she was cryogenically frozen, but aside from that, Steve Fox to me feels very real. He's a boxer who was forced to go on the run from the mob when he wouldn't take a dive for them. That's not something you would really expect to find in a world full of space lasers and volcano duels. That's something that sounds more at home in a Guy Ritchie film. And I love that Steve Fox brings that tone to this universe. Plus, again, just speaking personally, boxing is cool, and I do enjoy how the Tekken team makes it work in their game. And most importantly, Street Fighter also has some fairly famous boxers, so I feel like that if we're going to do the whole rival fight thing, Steve has to be in here, so that way we can work in...
Now fight your rivals!
Well then, let's begin.
Dudley. Yeah, I bet a lot of you were expecting Balrog to pop up in here, and I'll admit, I was tempted. I mean, as I said, Steve Fox was on the run from the mob for not taking a dive, and when I think of boxers who would have no problem breaking the law or fighting dirty as long as it meant a nice payday, Balrog jumps to the top of that list. But honestly, I think Balrog has had more than enough moments in the sun. It's time that we let Dudley get some more spotlight time. And I bet many other Street Fighter fans would agree. Dudley's been a big fan favorite since he first popped up in Street Fighter 3. Also, Steve and Dudley are both British, so I could totally see them meet in an official match, and both of them are very gentlemanlike, and they both have respect for the sport. So I would dig seeing these two go up against each other, and rather than finding a rivalry born from opposing personalities, they find a more friendly rivalry with a mutual respect for each other.
Get ready for the next battle.
Stream is live. You ready?
Julia Chang. Julia is another character who shows off the legacy of Tekken, as her mother was a fighter in Tekken 1 and 2, and then Julia took over for her after that. But she also is a great example of the growth these characters have gone through over the games. For her first couple of appearances, Julia was basically just her mother. But in Tekken 7, she completely stepped out and truly became her own character and now really feels unique. She is a super scientist who is researching ways to revitalize the forest of her Arizona homeland, which would be more than enough on its own to make her stand out. But then Tekken 7, she took her fight for the environment online and became a streaming influencer. And I kinda love this. Like, this is one of the only times I've seen the online influencer trope in a game and it wasn't horrendously cringy. And most people seem to think so too. I saw a bunch of people who were never interested in Julia suddenly taking notice. This was a great glow up for this character, so I say we keep this going by bringing her into this crossover and making her rival...
Now fight your rivals!
Crap.
You just can't ignore someone in distress.
Rashid. So far, all the Street Fighter characters we've covered have been classics, characters who have been with this series for generations now, but we need to get some new blood in here. We need some of the characters introduced in Street Fighter V, and hey, I've said it before, but I personally really dig Rashid. He's easily one of my favorite new additions to the game. I dig his jokey, upbeat tone, and I think he would fit great with Tekken's unique sense of humor. I think his fighting style of flipping and dipping all over the screen is super fun, and I'd love to see how the Tekken team will adapt that. And as for why his rival would be Julia, well, Rashid is also a big tech nut, so they both got a bit of a super science background to them. But the main reason is Rashid is also an influencer. Okay, confession time. I kind of hate the word influencer. it feels sort of cult leadery to me, so screw it. I'm just going to say he's a YouTuber. We all know that's what he really is. They can call it something else for legal reasons, but we all know he's a YouTuber. So yes, Rashid is a YouTuber with a channel where he goes around fighting people. I can totally see him fighting Julia's channel, seeing she's also a fighter and has way more views than him, and he's trying to hunt her down for a collab. Also, there's tons of fun that we can have with Rashid's over-the-top personality. Like, for example, in Tekken Tag Tournament 2, Julia had to disguise herself as a pro wrestler named JC. And I can totally imagine a joke where Rashid is a big JC fan and he has no idea that was Julia.
Get ready for the next battle.
I will handle them. Right. Let's pummel them.
Asuka Kazama and Lily de Rochefort. We are now finally halfway through the list, so let's blow through that milestone by doing 2 characters at once. Asuka Kazama was introduced in Tekken 5, and they really pushed for her to be a big star in the game, even being Jin's cousin, meaning she now fits into the whole crazy Mishima family drama. And just speaking personally, I think she's great. She's an aggressive tomboy who goes out on the street beating up thugs and bullies. How can you not love that? And if you're including Asuka, then you have to include her stuck-up heiress rival, Lily. The two of them are a package deal. And it's easy to see why. The down-to-earth tough girl and the snooty rich snob, it's a great dynamic. So much so that I'm shocked that another fighting game series hasn't done the exact same thing. Oh, wait!
Now fight your rivals!
I'll show you the divide in our class. Uh-oh. Pleased to meet you.
Sakura and Karin. Yeah, this has to happen. This is such a no-brainer. I am stunned that in Street Fighter Cross Tekken, when Asuka and Lily were put on the same team, they didn't go ahead and make Sakura and Karin their rivals in there. The only thing I can assume is that there was this weird legal problem surrounding Karin in which Capcom didn't fully own that character, so maybe that wasn't all cleared up by the time Street Fighter Cross Tekken came out. But since Street Fighter V's release, those legal problems have been resolved and she is now 100% on the table. So if we're going to include Asuka and Lily on the Tekken side, we have to include the Street Fighter blueprint that mapped that character dynamic out. And the great thing about this is, yeah, it would make sense for Asuka to be Sakura's rival and Karin to be Lily's rival. But we could just as easily mix it up and have Lily and Sakura be rivals, or Asuka and Karin, as Asuka looks over at Karin and says, "You know, I can't put my finger on it, but there's just something about you that makes me really want to punch you in the face." It'd be great.
Get ready for the next battle.
Leroy Smith. As I said with Rashid, when you make a crossover game, you can't just go with the staples. You need some new blood. You need those characters that show off the current face of the series. But speaking personally, I didn't really care for any of the new characters introduced in Tekken 7. None of them felt that memorable to me. That is until we got to the DLC, and there were some winners in there. The first one to really stand out to me was Leroy Smith, a wise old Wing Chun master from New York City. He's got a level of maturity and style to him that instantly makes him pop out, while still having a bit of old 70s martial arts cinema flair to him. Plus, he's got a dog, so I instantly love him. And it wasn't just me that he left an impact on. I remember for almost a year after he came out, Leroy Smith was the character to play. You went to a Tekken tournament, you would see 5-6 Leroys in the top 8. Yeah, he was busted. But he was fun, so who cares?
Now fight your rivals!
Okay, let's rumble.
Alex. This muscle-bound mechanic was the face of Street Fighter 3, the first time the series shifted focus away from Ryu towards a new generation of fighters, and while it might have taken a while, he's grown to become a standout star for the series. However, young professional wrestler might not seem like the perfect rival for an old Wing Chun master, so why did I pick him to pair up with Leroy? It all comes down to three things: location, location, location. Both Alex and Leroy are from New York City. And I know that some people might think it's a stretch for me to say that we should match two characters up simply because of where they're from. But I'm not saying we should match them up because Alex and Leroy are both from America. No, we're matching them up because they're both from the same tiny overpriced strip of real estate. Alex could walk from his apartment to Leroy's, and heck, it's never been said exactly where they come from in New York, but I could totally see Alex being from Brooklyn and Leroy being from the Bronx. Then you got a battle of the boroughs going on in here. And New York is one of those cities that's always in constant shift. There's always this feeling of old New York versus new New York, so the age difference between these two would play into that as well.
Get ready for the next battle.
Fakum Ram. Continuing our list of new fighters introduced in Tekken 7, I remember when the trailer for Fakum Ram came out, and you just saw this giant mountain of tattoos and muscles being airdropped out of a helicopter, then towering over the other characters. I instantly said, well, we got a new breakout star on our hands. Yeah, in a series full of psychopaths and demons, Fakum Ram is still overflowing with intimidation. And he's even got an interesting backstory. He was arrested for a crime they didn't commit, and then told that if he ever wanted to see his wife and daughter again, he'd have to fight on behalf of his government. I know that Tekken has a pretty good track record of bringing back characters in new games, so I'm really hoping that when Tekken 8 comes out, we get to see his story continue, because this was a character that instantly left an impression on the series.
Now fight your rivals!
Your words are not needed.
Sagat. This has to be one of the most obvious rivalry fights in this whole video. Sagat is born to fight Fakum Ram. Both of them are Muay Thai masters, both of them are covered in scars, and both of them are so tall that when they challenge you, they block out the sun. And that's a rival fight I need to see. Fakum Ram is 6'7", and Sagat is 7'5". Just think about the fact that Fakum Ram would enter the fight, and then he would have to look up. I need to see that scene of his neck just slowly craning up as the camera pulls back to reveal Sagat looking down on him. But beyond just that shot, which honestly I think is all you need to sell this fight, I think you could still work some good story in here. With everything that's happened to him, Fakum Ram is certainly mad and wants revenge against those who have wronged him. And Sagat, well, let's just say he chased that tiger called revenge for a long time before he finally calmed down. So the two of them would definitely have some good words exchanged between them. If they actually talk to each other. Both these guys really seem like people who do more talking and communicating with their fist.
Get ready for the next battle.
Anybody else want a piece?
Lei Wulong. Lei Wulong is a very interesting character. For starters, in a genre of games where every franchise has a Bruce Lee character, Lei Wulong was a Jackie Chan character, inspired by the action star's long line of movies, especially his police story films. But more importantly, from a technical standpoint, Tekken is a series where characters can have dozens, heck, even hundreds of moves, with every single direction and button and motion all merging to create brand new combinations. And Lei Wulong is a stance fighter, able to use 5 different animal stances as well as Drunken Master style, making him one of the most complicated characters with an astronomical list of moves. But you know what? You need that character. You need characters in your crossover game for the people out there that want a challenge. Don't get me wrong, you shouldn't overwhelm players with that. You shouldn't put too many of those characters in there. But for all those Street Fighter players who have never touched a Tekken game before and this is their first exposure to it, it would be a good idea to at least have that one character in there that when the Street Fighter players look at their move list, their jaw just drops as they realize what this franchise is capable of.
Now fight your rivals!
Want to see my kung fu? I'll show you.
Chun-Li. Yeah, I'll admit, most of the Street Fighter characters I'm covering are here because I started with the Tekken character, and then I asked who would be a good rival for them. But with this one, it's the exact opposite. We need to get Chun-Li in here. No way can you have a Street Fighter crossover game and not have Chun-Li in it. And out of all the Tekken characters, I think that Lei Wulong would be the best fit for her. I mean, he's an older man who is very friendly and warm and welcoming, but he's also a cop who is dedicated to his job and tracking down criminals no matter what. Which is literally how I would describe Chun-Li's father, whose memory she's constantly trying to live up to. Her getting to team up with Lei Wulong and then test her fighting skills against him would be a perfect character moment for Chun-Li. It would be a great way to sort of reconnect with the memory of her father. Also, just speaking mechanically, Tekken is famous for each character having 10-string combos, and Chun-Li is famous for her rapid-fire kicks. So I'd be really interested in seeing how Tekken would implement that into their 10-string format. Would you have to hit a certain input for each kick? I want to know what they would do with that.
Get ready for the next battle.
Bryan Fury. We got too many heroes on this roster. We need some villains. And when talking about fighting game bad guys, you can't get much badder than Bryan Fury. A cybernetic soldier who is basically a walking 80s action film in human form. Bryan Fury is a psychopath who only has one goal: to create chaos and burn down and blow up anything in his path. And you know something? He's really fun. Yeah, one of the things that makes fighting game characters stand out is personality, and Bryan Fury's personality is explosive. His aggressive, total a-hole demeanor, his love of heavy artillery, and of course, that laugh. It's so iconic. People that don't even like Tekken like Bryan Fury because he is just overflowing with insane evil machismo.
Now fight your rivals!
Oh man, I was really planning on saving the main course for last. Whatever. I'll just eat you up, bones and all.
Juri Han. Of course, Bryan's rival fight has to be with Juri. I was tempted to make it Chun-Li and make this a story about Chun-Li having to track Bryan down and bring him to justice, but yeah, forget all that. How are we going to have a character like Bryan Fury in our game, a volcano of crazy, and not pit him head-to-head with the evil Cheshire Cat Juri Han? If you need a villain from Street Fighter who could go toe-to-toe with Bryan Fury in a battle of maddening malicious bloodlust, it's Juri. Heck, the laughing scene between the two of them alone justifies this entire game's existence. I feel like I'm cutting this one a little bit short, but I don't really have anything else that needs to be said about this one. It just makes sense, and I really want to see it happen. Moving on.
Get ready for the next battle.
We don't have a lot of time. Okay, Bob, let's go.
Leave this to me.
Bob. Listen, I've got to include Bob in here because A, I love his gameplay. He's a big dude, but unlike most big fighting game characters, he's quick. He's a rushdown character, and I am all for big guys who can rush down. But also, I just really like Bob as a character. He's charming, he's cocky, and he's an MMA star who conquered the fighting game world, so he went on to be a super agent bounty hunter. I'll be honest with you, I don't know how the rest of the Tekken fanbase feels about Bob, but he's one of my favorites. So if his playstyle and his personality isn't enough to sell you on him, then screw it. I'm gonna go ahead and use my one free I'm putting them in here just for me card on this one.
Now fight your rivals!
So then, you really want to go through the trouble? Fine!
Luke. Luke is the new face of Street Fighter. This man is the future of the franchise. We know that because the developers told us he is. Okay, yes, I will admit, I'm not sold on Luke just yet. I've talked about this before on the channel, but hey, it's still early. There's still plenty of time to see how he'll play out in Street Fighter 6, and people are currently loving him on the competitive scene. But no matter what arguments you can make for or against him, fact is, he's going to be a big deal for Street Fighter 6, so Capcom would absolutely demand that he gets put into this game. And I think he'd be a good fit for Bob's rival fight, because Luke became an MMA fighter so that he could travel the world and take on a wide variety of opponents. Well, as I said, Bob used to not only be an MMA fighter, he was a champ. So I could see Luke trying to track down this legendary fighter, only to find him and be shocked at how different he looks now. Which means this could be a great opportunity for Luke to learn not to judge a book by its cover when Bob shows him that he's still got his moves. And another defining trait of Bob is his strong sense of justice, which could remind Luke of his dad. I know this might seem like an odd matchup at first, but the more that you think about it, there's a lot here to tie these two together.
Get ready for the next battle.
Zafina. Zafina was introduced in Tekken 6 as the guardian of this tomb that housed an ancient demon inside, and it's heavily implied that she's got some ominous mystical powers and knowledge. Well, if this is a big crossover game, you know there's going to be some kind of a huge threat. Even if the plot doesn't revolve around anything serious like realities merging and worlds colliding, and it's just, hey, these characters are meeting. Don't worry about why. There's still going to have to be some big otherworldly threat that they have to go up against. So who better to include than a character who might have some secret knowledge of this ancient mystical threat they all have to face. And beyond that, Zafina is another one of those characters who is just different. She is not a conventional fighter. She has such a unique playstyle. And as I have said many times before, you want to include those Tekken characters that really show off how crazy these fights can get.
Now fight your rivals!
To see one's fate, one must fight their future. Only one who can see their future can truly understand one's fate.
Rose. And now you see the big reason why I wanted Zafina in this roster. Sometimes there's just two characters who match up so well that I have to include them. And Rose and Zafina are another one of those combinations that have to meet. Both of them are mystically powered characters who have vague, mysterious knowledge of cryptic events or creatures. Both of them have moves that involve them twisting and dancing and striking poses. Heck, in the last game, Zafina was even given a big long scarf just like Rose. These two have to have a rival fight. And I hope that the big cutscene before it is nothing but the two of them strutting and voguing for the camera for 3 whole minutes as they talk about fate and destiny.
Get ready for the next battle.
Eddie Gordo. Eddie Gordo has a long and winding history. He was a capoeira master who was sent to jail for a crime they didn't commit, being blamed for his father's death. After being released, he fought to raise money for his master's surgery, joined a world-conquering military task force, and then finally became a backup dancer. He has led a very interesting life. But I have to include Eddie because to me, he's one of those characters that when you think of Tekken, he comes to your mind right away. When Tekken 3 came out, his crazy spinning and twisting moves were one of the first things that made people realize what this game was capable of. If someone played Tekken 3 when they were a kid, and over time they ended up forgetting everything about that game as they grew up, if you just say Eddie Gordo to them, a wave of nostalgia will come flying back to them. But despite being so important to the series, He was absent from Street Fighter Cross Tekken. So I say we correct that by bringing him into Tekken Cross Street Fighter.
Now fight your rivals!
Okay, you guys saved my life. But it's my sister's. I happen to have it here.
Watch out!
Huh? Laura?
Hi! Were you guys talking about me?
Laura Matsuda. There were actually a couple of characters I thought would make for good rival fights against Eddie Gordo. I actually came this close to making Cody his rival fight simply because of the shared background they have with both being falsely arrested. But in the end, I wanted to include Laura for a few reasons. The first being that she was another big breakout character for Street Fighter V, and as I've said before, you want to make sure that you include characters that represent the latest installment of the series. But as for why she's specifically being put in here as Eddie's rival, well, this is a case where I'll admit their country of origin is playing into it some. But it's not just because both of these characters are from Brazil, it's also because both of them wear their homes on their sleeves. Literally. Both of them have outfits that proudly display the green and yellow patterns of their flags. But more importantly, Laura's upbeat and energetic attitude would contrast Eddie's more strict and serious tone, while at the same time, it would remind Eddie of someone from his past. You see, after he got out of prison, Eddie trained a student named Christy. And Christy and Laura, I actually feel share a lot in common. But when making this roster, I had to choose whether or not to include Eddie or Christy, and as I said, Christy was already in Street Fighter Cross Tekken, while Eddie was left absent, and I did want to include some new characters in here. So I say we include Eddie in here, and then when the two of them have their rival fight, we could actually have a really nice moment for Eddie as he comments on how Laura reminds him of someone that's important to him.
Get ready for the next battle.
Yoshimitsu. We're almost done with the roster, and I'm sure at this point some of you were starting to sweat whether or not Yoshimitsu might make it in. Of course he's going to make it in. This is probably the last huge Tekken name I haven't included yet. He's an icon for Tekken. Heck, considering that he's also in Soul Calibur, Yoshimitsu is practically an icon for Bandai Namco in general. He has so many things that make him stand out. His crazy swordplay that makes him unique compared to every other sword fighter in fighting games. His constant changing attire that ranges from cool to Lovecraftian, or even just that distorted voice of his that makes him sound otherworldly. You put all that together and you get a fighter that can't be duplicated and is 100% memorable. I mean, his official title is Space Ninja. How can I not include him in this game?
Now fight your rivals!
What's up with him?
Bravo! Let's do it again!
Loser.
Sodom. Okay, I'd argue that every single character I have included in this series so far has been a mainstay. They're big names in the series, they're classics, or they're new faces that are important to the most recent installments. They're characters you would expect to pop up in a game with Street Fighter or Tekken characters. But what do I always say when we do an episode of Build the Roster? You can't just have the faces, you gotta have the freaks. You need those weird picks. You need those far out there left field choices that will make people say, I'm sorry, what? And crossover games are the perfect place for that. Crossover games are where you need to make sure that you include at least one or two characters that people haven't seen in a while. And so far, every character I've included on the Street Fighter side was from either Street Fighter 4 or Street Fighter V, the two most recent installments. So let's get weird here with an out of left field pick. A pick that hasn't been seen in these games since the Alpha series. And I would say that Sodom fits perfectly right in that little Venn diagram spot where bizarre characters that haven't been seen in a long time perfectly overlaps with fan favorite characters that have a cult following that demand they return. This guy has a dedicated fan base, and I'll be honest with you, I don't entirely get it, but it's there. That fan base exists. And you know what? If they've stuck by him for this long, let's go ahead and throw him a bone. And I think he would fit pretty well within this spot because Sodom is a member of the Mad Gear gang who, despite being born in America, is obsessed with Japan. So let's go ahead and make him Yoshimitsu's rival because both of them come from their own unique secret band of warriors. Granted, with Yoshimitsu, it is a ninja clan that dates back centuries, and with Sodom, it's a group of street thugs that ruins the lives of everyone in Metro City. But also, I would just love to see the interactions between them as Sodom nerds out all over this ancient mystic ninja. Yoshimitsu's reaction alone to seeing this big hulking brute fanboying all over him would be great.
Get ready for the next battle.
Mission complete. Returning to HQ.
Raven. You can't exactly describe a character as just being cool because that's something that is very subjective, but Raven is just flat out cool. His design, his attitude, I mean, he's essentially just what if Blade was a ninja. I remember the moment that he popped up in the intro to Tekken 5. Heihachi blows up, and then suddenly there's this badass ninja in shades that we've never seen before just standing there delivering the famous line,
Heihachi Mishima is dead.
For anyone who had been getting a little tired of Tekken at this point and had begun to fall off of the series, that moment brought you roaring back in and cemented this brand new character in players' minds. And I will admit, I did have to decide whether or not to include Classic Raven or his boss Master Raven from Tekken 7. And while I do like Master Raven as well, the fact that the old school Raven was absent from Tekken 7 made me pick him. As I said, it's good for a crossover game to bring in some brand new characters, but it's also important to bring in some characters that players might have been missing. Some characters who might have been left out of some more recent installments. So if you were waiting for Classic Raven to pop up in Tekken 7 and you were sad that never happened, now's your chance to finally play as him again.
Now fight your rivals!
Yes, that's right. Understood.
Sea Viper. Speaking of characters who were left out of the most recent installment of their games, Sea Viper was one of the most prominent faces of Street Fighter 4. She was all over the marketing of that game when it was released, and was arguably the most popular new character in its base roster. But despite being so big in Street Fighter 4, she was absent from Street Fighter Cross Tekken, which was made partly to celebrate Street Fighter 4's release. And she never made it into Street Fighter V, despite the fact that she was in multiple character story modes and was even featured in some promotional material released by Capcom themselves. So that tells me that this character is still in players' and developers' minds, and they might have been missing her from the most recent installment, so let's go ahead and add her in here. And it would just make sense for her to go head-to-head with Raven. Both of them are agents who work for super secretive high-tech clients. Just say that they were hired for reasons that would cause them to go up against each other, it's a no-brainer. And that brings us to our final Tekken character, and for this last fighter, I'm going to have to once again go back to the well of fan favorite characters.
Get ready for the next battle.
Feng Wei. Despite the fact that he's never really played into the greater overall plot of Tekken, Feng Wei remains one of the biggest badasses in the entire series. This guy is a monster who is obsessed with one thing: growing stronger. So much so that in his official character biography, it lists his likes as ultimate strength. And he's done the work to back up these boasts. I think I speak for anyone who was playing Tekken in the PS2 era that the moment we saw his ending in Tekken 5, where he split a mountain apart, we realized, oh, this guy is a beast. And considering that his entire thing is wanting power and searching out strong battles, if we had a game where the greatest fighters of two different franchises all came together, don't you think he'd be a perfect fit for that? Even if the developers didn't put him in this game, he would still somehow find a way to shove his way into the roster. And with a motivation like that, who else could be his opponent other than...
Now fight your rivals!
Akuma. How could we not include Akuma in the roster? This is our final Street Fighter character, and you know there is no way I could have ended this roster off without including Akuma in it. He's the only Street Fighter character who canonically exists in the Tekken universe. Yeah, when it was announced he was going to be a guest character in Tekken 7, I'm sure that all of us thought he was just going to be a little Easter egg or a secret character. No, he's in the story. Heavily. He has lore in this universe now that ties back into the Mishima family for decades. You cannot tell the story of Heihachi and Kazuya now without bringing up Akuma, which means he would be great to include in this game, because if you had a mirror match of Akuma fighting himself, they could have a bit of pre-fight dialogue where one of them is the Akuma from Street Fighter and one of them is the Akuma from Tekken. And as for his rival, I was tempted to make it Heihachi or Kazuya, since he still has some unresolved issues with them from Tekken 7. But did you hear my description of Feng Wei? These are both beastly fighters who only crave two things: the thrill of battle and growing stronger. These are two unstoppable forces that need to meet. Heck, Akuma often refers to himself as a demon. Feng Wei's fighting style is called God Fist. This is a battle born to happen. And there you have your 22 Tekken combatants and your 22 Street Fighters. Oh, but we're not done yet, because there's one question still on our minds. With all these mighty fighters coming together, who exactly would they be fighting? What's the big threat? Who is the final boss waiting for them at the end of the arcade ladder? Well, Street Fighter Cross Tekken mixed things up by having two final bosses. If you were playing as a Tekken team, you would go up against Akuma. And if you were playing as a Street Fighter team, you would go up against Ogre. And this is a fun idea, but I personally prefer to have just one villain. Something that both teams could unite against. So, my choice for the big final bad guy has to be...
Get ready for the next battle.
世界中の格闘家が集う夢の祭典鉄拳タッグトーナメント1回戦も残すところあと4試合となりました。次のステージに駒を進めるのは果たしてどのタッグに
お客さん、一体どちらまで？
わからんか。このたぎる闘志の無冠法じゃ。
Jinpachi. Yes, I know there are more iconic final bosses from Tekken like Ogre, but as I said, Ogre was one of the big bosses in Street Fighter Cross Tekken, so I want to get somebody new in here. And personally, I'm always going to have a spot in my big monster face belly for Jinpachi. Not only was he insanely hard in Tekken 5 with those giant energy blasts and devastating strength, but he's got a backstory befitting a final boss. Heihachi, after taking over the Mishima Zaibatsu, buried his father alive under his dojo to let him slowly die, only for Jinpachi to survive by becoming possessed by a demon, which is the other reason I'm picking him as the final boss. When you do a crossover, I always dig the idea of having a final boss that merges elements of both games. So, let's have Jinpachi return from the dead, but his body is still possessed by a demon. However, this time, that demon is the Satsui no Hado. And let's make his new form look like a cross between his Tekken 5 form and Oni from Street Fighter 4. Yeah, give him dark blue energy irradiating off of him, have the little spirit orbs flying around him, and let him do a raging demon just for the hell of it. Now that's a final boss fitting bringing all these characters together. And there you have the full roster for Tekken Cross Street Fighter. Akuma, Alex, Asuka Kazama, Bob, Brian Fury, Cammy, Chun-Li, Crimson Viper, Dan Hibiki, Dudley, Eddie Gordo, Fakuram, Fei Long, Feng Wei, Gouken, Heihachi Mishima, Hwoarang, Jin Kazama, Julia Chang, Juri Han, Karin, Kazuya Mishima, Ken Masters, King, Laura Matsuda, Lei Wulong, Leroy Smith, Lily Rochford, Luke, Martial Law, Nina, Paul Phoenix, Rashid Raven, Rose Ryu, Sagat Sakura, Sodom, Steve Fox, Urian, Yoshimitsu Zafina, and Zangief. That is one hefty roster, and to start the game off, I think it's jam-packed. No matter who you are, no matter how you like to play, no matter what type of character you like to use, that is a roster that will provide you with someone that you want to play. So I think our work here today is done. For the starting roster, that's right, you know we can't leave it at just the base game. We have to go into the DLC. Yes, I know when talking about a sequel to Street Fighter Cross Tekken, the worst thing that you can do is bring up DLC, but I think as long as we don't load it all onto the disc, then we'll be just fine. Now, Street Fighter Cross Tekken, as I pointed out, had 12 characters planned for DLC, so I figure we could reasonably argue putting the same amount into this game. That means 6 more pairs of rivals, and you know what? Since we're now done with the main cast, I'm just going to tackle these pairs together.
Get ready for the next battle.
Ling Xiaoyu and Sean. When you put together a big roster like this, there will always be those staples of the series who get left out. You can't fit everybody into the game that you want, and the Tekken side definitely had some prominent characters left out, such as Ling Xiaoyu, so let's bring her back in the DLC. She started off as Jin's friend and was often used as a source of comedy, constantly hounding Heihachi to build her an amusement park. But as the series went on and Jin took a semi-heel turn and started World War III, I feel like I can't bring up that was a thing that happened enough. She became a more serious character trying to help her friend. So I figure we should match her up with another young character who is also sometimes used for comedy, but is also tied to one of the main characters. And since I already used Sakura, the next answer is Sean. But honestly, even if I didn't feel like Sean was a good matchup for Xiaoyu, I'd still try to sneak him in here somewhere because, listen, I don't know if anyone from Capcom is going to see this, but I'm just gonna let y'all know if there is one thing that I have learned over the last 2 years of doing these videos, it's that you are sitting on money with Sean. Every single time that I talk about Street Fighter in any video, the comments and chat are always loaded with people asking, "Where's Sean? Why isn't Sean here? Why aren't you getting Sean into the game now?" And etc. The people that like Sean freaking love Sean, and they will totally show up to support their man no matter where he is and no matter how much DLC money he might cost.
Get ready for the next battle.
Leo and Akira. Alright, let's just go ahead and get one thing out of the way right now. I know that a lot of you might be thinking that I'm putting Akira on here just because she's one of my favorite fighting game characters ever. And okay, maybe that is playing a part in it, but I assure you there is a far bigger reason why she's here. First off, her and Leo would make for solid rivals. Both of them are young motorcycle-riding, leather-clad wearing fighters who are out there searching for family members. They would probably get along swimmingly. But the big reason I'm putting this pair in here is because... what's Akira's last name? Kazama. You know, like Asuka Kazama, or more importantly, Jin Kazama. I would love to see Harada put her into this game just so that he could work in some crazy backstory that ties her into the Kazama family. And for anyone out there thinking they couldn't do that, she's a Capcom character. They made Akuma an intricate part of the Mishima family backstory. And that wasn't even in a crossover game, that was in an installment of the main series. And it all tied into the story of Heihachi's death and the origin of the Devil Gene. So not only is he in the story, he's not even a part of the story that you can skip. So yeah, I know that putting Akira in here just because she has the exact same name as one of Tekken's protagonists might seem like a far out there stretch, but trust me, they could do something like this. Even if they just say that she is a distant cousin twice removed, I want to see what kind of a connection that a madman like Harada would come up with.
Get ready for the next battle.
JC and R. Mika. I mentioned earlier that in Tekken Tag Tournament 2, Julia didn't appear as herself. Instead, she disguised herself as a masked wrestler named JC. Well, what I didn't mention is that she did this because the actual wrestler JC couldn't compete, so she asked her friend Julia to sub in for her. Which means that even if Julia was going under the name JC in Tekken Tag Tournament 2, within the Tekken universe, there is an actual fighter named JC who has tried to enter the Iron Fist tournament but never officially got in. Well, I've mentioned that crossover games are good places to add weird, obscure characters, and sometimes that means adding characters who have never actually been playable before. For example, Poison is now one of the most popular Street Fighter characters out there. But do you know where she officially became a playable character in the series for the very first time? Street Fighter Cross Tekken. Before that, she was just a character in Hugo's intro animation and a random villain in Final Fight. So, if Street Fighter Cross Tekken made a non-playable character playable for the very first time in that game, let's do the same for Tekken Cross Street Fighter. Let's have JC actually be a playable character, and if you're wondering why I'm going so far out of my way to try and justify this, it's because she'd be a perfect rival match for R. Mika. Mika is one of the most popular Street Fighter characters. People would love to see her in this game, and she's a masked wrestler. So putting her up against another masked wrestler would just make sense, and since we already have King going up against Zangief, our next logical choice is JC. Or I guess Armored King, but I don't really know if Armored King would be a great match for R. Mika. Mecha Zangief, on the other hand...
Get ready for the next battle.
Ogre and M. Bison. This one is simple. Ogre is one of the most iconic end bosses for Tekken, and M. Bison is the most iconic end boss for Street Fighter. Ogre is a god of fighting who is attracted to places where people do battle. M. Bison hosts tournaments to find strong fighters to control. Ogre is overflowing with otherworldly strength. M. Bison is constantly looking for new bodies that he can take over that are overflowing with otherworldly strength. I don't even feel like this one really needs that much explain, and I'm really just trying to stall for time at this point. The only reason these two weren't in the main roster is because if you put Ogre in the main roster, he kinda has to be the final boss. There's no other place for him. So let's save him for DLC so that way someone else can get a chance in the spotlight.
Get ready for the next battle.
Elisa and Seth. Tekken is no stranger to robot fighters. They've had big, bulky mohawk mechs since the very first game. But in Tekken 6, they went from big, tanky robots into super anime robots with Elisa Bosconovich. She had jetpacks, rocket fists, chainsaw arms, and an exploding replaceable head. In a series loaded with high-tech super science, Elisa is the top-of-the-line, state-of-the-art fighting machine. So, why not match her up with Street Fighter's very own super sinister android? I could totally see Seth trying to steal some of Dr. Boscanovich's tech, and Elisa has to stop them. That setup works well, makes total sense, but even if it didn't, then I would make it make sense, because I want Seth in here. Why do I want them in this game? Because one of the things that made Seth so unique in Street Fighter V was that all of their moves were based on other Capcom fighting games, and they had the ability to steal unique moves from other characters. So, let's bring that into this game. But now, you can steal moves from the Tekken characters. Let's have Seth doing Heihachi's Electric Wind God Fist or Paul's Power Punch. Let's see how many moves Seth can steal from them, and then each of their regular attacks can be based on various Tekken characters that didn't make it into this game. In Street Fighter V, Seth was basically just a big reference machine for Capcom fighters, so let's let the Tekken team go nuts with that exact same idea. Have them essentially be the evil version of Mokujin with unlimited power. And that means we now come to our final DLC character, and I have often said that when it comes to DLC, you need your final character to just go nuts. You want your last DLC character to be one that people wouldn't expect, and yet still makes total sense. So for the final characters to close this game out, I'm going with...
Get ready for the next battle.
Devil Jin and Evil Ryu. Now, I know. Some of you who aren't that familiar with these characters right now might be thinking, really? The final characters are just going to be different versions of the first characters you listed off? Oh, you don't even know. Don't let the names confuse you. Devil Jin and Evil Ryu are totally unique beasts, and I do feel like they're the perfect pair to close the DLC out. For starters, just speaking in terms of power, these two would be crazy over the top. Not saying we would make the final two characters broken, no, because then you'd just be forcing people to pay extra money so that way they could have better characters. We'd still try to keep them balanced, but you could give them moves that were crazier than anything we had seen so far. And you always want your last two characters to be the ones that are going to leave an impression on players, ones that they're going to remember. So if we gave these characters just a bunch of big unga-bunga attacks where they're just shooting out eye lasers and giant Hadoukens all over the field and just being super aggressive, yeah, even if they were completely, totally, fairly balanced, players would remember them. But also, I feel like we have to include these characters. I said it long ago when the episode started that Jin and Ryu both have a darkness inside them that they're fighting against. Well, I might have left out that both of them also have playable versions in their games that are themselves overwhelmed by this darkness. So considering how weird it is that they both just happen to have that in common, how can we not include those playable versions in this game as well? And making them the final characters in the DLC would be some really nice symmetry. Closing the entire game out with the exact same two characters that opened it? I'm a sucker for that kind of thing. That is the perfect way to bookend this whole game. And there you have it, everyone, your full Tekken Cross Street Fighter roster along with a full thick season of DLC. And you know what's great? Is that even after all this, even after listing off so many characters, there are still so many other Tekken and Street Fighter characters that we could keep going. We could do an entire other season of DLC just loaded with perfect matchups. But we've already been going for so long, there's no time for that. Okay, real quick, because it's going to bother me if I don't. Kuma and Blanca, a beast man and an actual beast. I would love to see these two fight, and for Kuma to have a moment where he's shocked that Blanca can actually understand him. Marduk and Balrog, a former angry dirty wrestler and the always angry dirty boxer. Dragunov and Guile, the dark cold military guy versus the good family man military guy. Lydia Sobieska and G, the Prime Minister of Poland versus the President of the entire world. Kunimitsu and Ibuki, two young kunoichis, there's not really much more that you need beside that. And Lee and Vega, two fabulous fighters with huge egos who care only about the finer things in life. There, a whole extra season thrown in simply because bringing Tekken and Street Fighter characters together is just so much fun that I couldn't help myself. And I could keep going. I mean, heck, there's a ton of super obvious choices that I didn't even bother with, but that's all I got for you today. So, what do you think? Did you like this roster? Did you hate it? Would you play this game? Who would you include as a rival battle in your dream roster? Would you demand that we bring the Pandora system back because you're a Joker-level agent of chaos just trying to troll the comments because nobody wants the Pandora system to return? Let me know all that and more in the comments down below. And as I said, this is indeed our 2-year anniversary, and I seriously can't believe how much this channel has grown in that time. I thank everyone out there who has tuned in, everyone who has subscribed, and everyone who has shared these videos around the web. That stuff really does help our channel grow, and I really do appreciate it. You guys are the true gym system. I had to work in one last reference to the gym system in here. And as I said, we are trying to hit 50K by the end of the year, so if you haven't subscribed yet, then check out some of the other videos that are popping up right now. And if you like them, then click that subscribe button, click that bell, and maybe give us a thumbs up. Thanks again for tuning in, everyone. Stay safe out there, and come back next time.